Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sirga School again. Today, we will present an introduction to GNSS. I am João Francisco Galera Monico, professor from São Paulo State University, Unesp, Campus Presidente Prudente. The topics of this session is GNSS, constellation frequency, observable and position concept. We are going to talk also about the position methods taking into account the absolute and the relative one. And we are going also to say a few words a bit about ambiguity resolution. The basic reference that we are going to use is the Spring Handbook of GNSS by Theonis and Montebluc, the doctoral thesis of Paulo de Oliveira at Kinan, and my book, Posicionamento pelo GNSS. And I have been using all this link from the internet to update some of the information, mainly about the system. GNSS, it's acronym from Global Navigation Satellite System, and it involves the Navistar GPS from US, the GLONASS from Russia, Galileo from European Community, Beidou from China, and we also have in the scope of GNSS the regional system like QZSS in Japan and NAVIC in India, and also the regional augmentation system. We here, for instance, they have several parameters. And for instance, the first one, you have the satellite number, the nominal number of satellites for the constellation. What is the number of satellites that you have now? And also, how many is not available at this moment, in the moment that I saw the status of the constellation. For instance, for GLONASS, we have now 24 satellites as nominal one, and 27 satellites in this space, but 3 of them are not available at this moment. For GPS, we have 24 satellites as nominal, 31 in this space, and 2 is not being used now. And here we can also see for Galileo and for Beidou that has a lot of number of satellites in this space, but 10 of them is not available now. The orbital plans, considering now the MIL satellites, the medium Earth orbit satellites. For GLONASS, we have 3 orbital planes. For GPS, you have 6, and for Galileo, we have 3, and for the Beidou, we also have 3 for the new satellites orbital planes. But we have one as a geostationary one plan that is a geostationary, and 3 that is inclined geosynchronous orbits. And the inclination of the orbital planes we can see here is more or less the same, only GLONASS that is a little bit high to make more satellite available in the north region. And here are the frequencies of all these satellites. For GPS, you have here, GPS is have here, GLONASS here, Galileo, we have here. We also have the E6 for Galileo, that is not here. And we have the Beidou Compass that has all this kind of frequency available to the user. We have the codes here, the legacy codes, but for the GLONASS GPS, for instance, that we have some modernization, we have some new codes that we are going to show in one right next table. The ephemerides for GLONASS, it's giving position, velocity, acceleration, time. And for GPS, Galileo, and Beidou, they are giving a Keplerian elements. And the identification of the satellite, it is given in the GLONASS as FGMA, frequency division multiple access. But now they also have for the new satellites the code division multiple access. That is what we have for GPS, Galileo, and Beidou. And all almanacs are given in Keplerian elements. The basic observables of GNSS is pseudo-range, carrier phase, Doppler, and SNR, signal to noise ratio. And we are going just to talk about the pseudo-range and the carrier phase. How is the pseudo-range measurement done? It is one-way range, is one distance between the satellite and the receiver antenna. Is the measurement of time of flight of the coded signal. This coded signal is measured in one characteristic that is called code correlation. The receiver knows how the code is composed, and he produces a replica here, and using cross correlation, it can measure the time of flight of the code signal that multiplied by the velocity of the light, we can get the measurement of the distance. This is the main navigation observable. We have the carrier phase measurement. At the first measure, we just get a fractional part of the cycle, but once cycles is entering in the receiver knows how to count the number of intercycles that go in the receiver. And the second measurement is the number of intercycle plus the second fractional measurement of the cycles. So we have something like this. At the first measurement, a fractional part of the cycle, and the second one, some intercycle plus a fractional part of the cycle. Doing like that, the ambiguities here, the integer number of cycles that you have from the satellite to the receiver, and here will be the same as far as the satellite is continuously being tracked. And so now we have the observation equation for the pseudo range. Here we have the mathematical model. At the left side, we have the observable. On the right side, we have the mathematical model, the functional one that you try to model all errors and also the parameters that you are interested. Like here in the geometric distance, we have the coordinates of the station. That is the parameter that we are interested in geodesy, for instance, for making position. But you have several other parameters here that are errors, at least for geodesy. And if you don't model this correctly, or at least in some extent very well, we don't get a very good position. And so we also have to take into account the random part of the signal, those error that you cannot model. So we have here the stochastical part and the functional one, that is the mathematical model. And here we have a description of all these parameters involved in this equation that I'm not going in details. This equation is giving meters, and here you have the carrier phase observation that is giving cycle. The measurement is giving cycle, but we convert here to meter to be compatible in some way with the pseudo range observation equation. And what you have from different here, we have the ionosphere that is minus here, and is plus here, and we have the ambiguities here, that we have the ambiguity in the carrier phase observer, don't have this in the pseudo range. And apart from that, we also have here these W's, the contribution of wind-up effects in the number of cycles. So we have this equation that can be written for each one of the frequencies and each one of the codes that you have available. And we have all these bias here that you have to take into account, the bias from the pseudo range and the bias from the carrier phase that has to be taken into account for very good position, and mainly when we have ambiguity resolution. We have to take into account the covariance metrics, yes, the stochastic model, together with the observation equation. A covariance matrix of the observation has to be available. In general, no correlation are assuming among the observable. How good is that is a big problem. And normally we have a diagonal matrix for the covariance matrix. The carrier phase is normally 2 order of magnitude better than the pseudo range. And here, just one example to get one covariance matrix of the observables. It is usual to take into account the satellite elevation angle at our CN0 or others to build the covariance matrix. And here's one example. Considering 2 pseudo range and 2 carrier phase at FEI, the frequency here, and the precision as function of the elevation angle. So here is one covariance matrix that can be given as like this. Here in the diagonal, we have the variance here for the carrier phase, and here for here for pseudo range, and here for the carrier phase. And here we assume that the precision of the pseudo distance is multiplied by some constant for the precision of the carrier phase, because the carrier phase is quite better than the pseudo distance. We assume here like 100, for example, to be this constant. And we also are considering here a elevation angle, a function of elevation angle. And so we can construct our covariance matrix of the original observable that normally we say undifferentiated observables. We need also to make combination of observation. Several combinations between GNSS observable are possible, are available, like wide lane, narrow lane, ion-free, Wilborn, Urbina, and several others. And why we do this at combination of single receiver and single satellite and the receiver? For some application, we can do carrier phase ambiguity resolution, isolation of elimination of the ionosphere, and multipath analysis. And here is one example of wide lane and narrow lane for GPS, GLONASS, Galileo, and BDS for some of these frequencies. And you have here the wavelength of this frequency. You see here for wide lane and using GPS L1 and L2, we have a wavelength of 86 centimeters that it's quite good for ambiguity resolution. We have the iono-free linear combination that's quite important in several applications, but here it's quite important to say that this combination make also a propagation of noise in the observable, but it eliminates more than 96% of the ionosphere delay. The Melbourne-Urbina linear combination that is given here, it's quite important as well in the GNSS. The Melbourne-Urbina combination provides a biased estimate of the wide lane ambiguity. And we also can make combination of multiple satellites with multiple receivers. Our combination that we say before, wide lane, narrow lane, Melbourne-Urbina, ion-free, we can make this combination between satellite and receiver in one multi-scale. All these combinations so can be used. We can do this between receiver, single difference, between satellite, single difference, and one of the most used one is the double difference. And you can also make triple difference. The double difference here, we can see that it is involved 2 receiver and 2 satellites, and we can combine here 4 observable and to write a new combination involved these 4 observable. And what is very good here is that several of the errors that we present before are eliminated or reduced in the satellite and in the receiver, and it is quite good for ambiguity resolution. At the end of the day, the ambiguity resolution is carried out in the double difference space. And here, just to give you one idea, as I said, that you have now several codes, not only CA and P code that you had at the beginning for GPS here. Now we have the L1C code for GPS 3. We have L2C for the L2 for the new satellites, the modernized satellites, and for L5 here. And we can have different kind of measurement. So nowadays we have several ways of choosing the observable to be used, either for pseudo range, either for carrier phase. So when you say I'm using L1 here, you have to specify which of this combination you are using. There are several possibilities. And now let's go for the positioning methods. We have the absolute position that we call single point position and precise point position. We can do this on static or kinematic mode. The relative position, we can do this in what we call static, rapid, and semi-kinematic. And this differentiation is due to because of the ambiguity resolution that provides some way to make this kind of algorithms. And we also have the kinematic one, that in this case, we have what we call RTK and NRTK. The single point position concept. Let's say here we have 3 satellites. We know the position from the ephemeris of the satellite that you receive. We measure the distance from the satellite to the user. So we need to estimate the XYZ of this user in one geocentric reference frame. So if you have 3 measurements, it's possible to estimate that. However, the clock in the satellite and the clock in the receiver are not at the same frame. And so we have an extra unknown, that is the clock error. So it's why we need to have at least 4 satellites to get one position, wherever in the world. But normally we have more than 4 satellites, and then you have to apply least square to solve for that. So with 4 satellites, we can solve your solution for the coordinates X, Y, and Z, and for the clock error. So the GNSS can also provide time. And for the errors here, we can apply, for instance, for the ionosphere, the Klobuchar model, and for the troposphere, we can use Sastamoine or Hopfield and so on. And so the comments about the SPP, satellite position from broadcast ephemeris, the accuracy is in the level of 10 to 15 centimeters, at 95% level, often referred as navigation solution. Normally, we say that this is what we use in most of the mobiles, is this, the SPP. It can also be computed with dual multi-frequency and data and the multi-constellation, or with dual or multi-frequency data and multi-constellation. But normally, we have used just L1 and some model for the ionosphere. And now I have the precise point position, the PPP. Precise point position provides absolute position in a precision global reference frame. We can do that either as iono-free or undifferenced observable. It uses pseudo range and carrier phase observation in combination with precise products. And normally now we use these precise products, at least for IGS, but some other companies also provide these products to the users. And so we have the precise orbits and clock, and all errors that we said before has to be estimated in the model or corrected from some previous model. One can use even single frequency as well as multi-frequency for PPP. One or more constellation is also possible, of course. The concept here, we have a coarse global or regional network that provide to the user the parameters that are needed, like the precise correction for the ephemeris, clocks, and bias. So satellite-dependent parameters are uploaded by the network and downloaded by the user. So the user applies the correction to his data, enable single receiver precise position. Is why we have, when we use PPP, you say just one receiver is enough, of course, for the user. But for those that provide this service, they need to have a network and several another infrastructure to compute all the parameters that are needed. Precise point position at single frequency level. The user has to apply ionospheric correction. This is essential, and it can be obtained from some external source, like the global ionospheric map from IGS. It's one example. It can also be estimated, but you can also get from another source, as actually you saw, we said it here. As the satellite clock offset are based on the iono-free combination, and it is the case for the IGS products, correction from terms from clock, code, and phase have to be applied. And you have this here in this slide, the correction that we have here. I'm not going in detail. You can see this later on, take into account this. And here we have for pseudo range the linearized observation equation for the pseudo range. And you have here the correction to transform the DCB from ionospheric free to the L1 pseudo range. And for the carrier phase, we also have here the linearized model where we have the ambiguity to be solved. And once you have all this information together, you can compute your design metrics A, you can have your covariance metrics, sigma L, you have your observable computed, the compute minus observed vector here, and you can estimate using applying least square Kalman filter your vector of parameters that in this case we are considering the correction to the approximate values of the coordinate of the station, the clock of the receiver, the troposphere correction, and the ambiguities. Okay? And it will be more or less the same for another possibilities. The single frequency PPP, the ionosphere was taken from a model like G. We can also estimate the ionosphere and include constraint if available. I can also, instead of correct the ionosphere, I can estimate this. The accuracy is in the level of decimeter after about 30 minutes of data collection, but it is improved with the time. And now, if you have multi-frequency PPP, we can use here in this example the iono-free. With dual frequency receiver, the first order ionosphere can be eliminated by using the combination ion-free. In the case of ion-free, it has to be also taken into account the covariance metrics, because the original observable will be deteriorated, will be more noisily in the iono-free. And to obtain the iono-free solution is equal what we did with the single frequency here, because here we will have the iono-free observables, and here the covariance metrics of the iono-free observables. And to obtain, okay, but the correction terms for code and phase do not have to be applied, because it is done on iono-free from IGS. And PPP with ambiguity resolution. Several models were developed. The ionosphere delay is included as a null. The ionosphere can be estimated and can be previously constrained if information is available. So we can estimate, it's quite good this. If you estimate the ionosphere, and if you have some information about the ionosphere, you can put this as constraint. The fractional part of the satellite phase bias are estimated using data from the network of receivers, as we said before, and such bias have to be provided to the users. And this fractional part bias is for some extent constant. We can keep this constant for some period of time, and it allows us to make a real-time application. And so these bias from the satellite are estimated from one network and provide to the user, and the receiver contribution of the bias. We can make some kind of single difference from the satellite. We can eliminate this in the receiver, and we can obtain the fractional part, and we can compute an integer solution. Ionospheric free versus uncombined PPP. Here we can say that iono-free combination could make the inclusion of multi-frequency observation to be complicated, since many possibilities exist. In order to provide a suitable representation for multi-frequency receiver and combined phase bias model compatible with the RTCM SSR framework may be better. And what is SSR? State space representation, that I don't have how to say here more details about that. But the International GNSS service provide a real-time PPP. Several products are available. Correction to the broadcast firms and clock and the ionosphere are available. You can see this in this link. And what is quite interesting, the BNC from BKG allows real-time and post-process PPP. They can offer the iono-free solution, the undifferent solution. And so if you go in this link, you can obtain the BNC and you can play with to do PPP. We can also play with the PPP wizard software from Kines. We have here you can get all this information here, and the PPP RTK Integer PPP improved by atmospheric correction from local or regional RTK network. It is the state of the art, and it's a lot of service is available now all over the world. And now if you go for the relative position, we have to use the double difference that eliminates several errors in the observables. And the real-time kinematic concept, a base station provides correction or observation to a rover receiver in real time. It is mainly the carrier phase used for the RTK. The aim is to reduce and remove errors common to a base station and a rover pair. All data processing is carried out in the rover, at least at this moment. Ambiguity should be fixed, and the accuracy can go to 1 centimeter plus 1 PPP, maybe a little bit worse. And here is just an illustration. We have a base station, the rover here, that get the information from the base station via a transmission antenna here, but it can also be through the internet or satellite and so on. And this is the RTK. There is a drawback because it deteriorates with the distance from the baseline, and one solution for that is the network RTK. It is based on several widely spaced permanent stations. Data from the permanent station regularly communicates to a central processing, and the RTK use to transmit their approximate location to the central station that calculated transmit correct information or correct position to the RTK using terminals. Network RTK techniques enable the establishment of position service which serve large region or whole country. And so we can create, at this case, the VRS, virtual reference station, the user can provide the system as that it was a relative position. We have here a network of station that you know the position. We get the measurement from the satellite. It goes to a central infrastructure, and then the user inside this network send in one bidirectional link your approximate position using NEMEA, for instance, and then the master station can send to the rover RTCM VRS file, and so the user file or correction, of course, both, and the user can make the relative position. Now, a few words about ambiguity resolution. What is the meaning of the term ambiguity solution? It is determine the correct integer number of carrier wavelength ambiguities between the satellite and the receiver. In such case, if it is solved, you have the ambiguity fixed solution. If it is not solved, you have the ambiguity float solution. And how it is done? From the initial float solution, we apply a specific method and one obtain the fixed solution. Once we obtain the fixed solution, the validation is quite very important. And we will not have time here to say about the validation, but it's quite important. One test that's quite useful is the ratio test. And several methods were developed and available in the literature. They mainly, but it's not only, based on wide lane and narrow lane technique that combine signal with different frequencies to help in the ambiguity resolution. We have the ambiguity decorrelation technique that is quite interesting. It's a mathematical approach like Lambda method developed at TU Delft. It reduces the correlation among the ambiguities for faster resolution. If we didn't have correlation between the ambiguities, the solution should be to approximate for the closest integer. And then here in the Lambda method, it tried to work more or less in this direction. And it's quite important to say that for short period of data collection, the parameter precision improves significantly. And here's one general idea of ambiguity resolution is to apply integer least square. Here we have the modulo of the float ambiguity with the integer ambiguity. It has to be minimal, and any belongs to the integer space. And you have, once you have the fixed solution, we have to apply this constraint. You will get the fixed solution. And here's the covariance matrix of the fixed solution. And it's quite important here to see is that the fixed solution is quite better, is better than the float solution, because this is this number, it will be always positive in the diagonal and will improve the precision. And once here, just to illustrate that, if you have a float solution in the meter level, once you fix the ambiguity, we are going for the centimeter level. It's a very good improvement. If it is very short data collection, if the data collection is very long, the improvement is not that so much. It is what I have to say. Thank you very much. If you have a question, I will be happy to answer if I know. Thank you.